This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Ever wondered if there's a better way to gauge your compatibility with other people on dating apps? Well, there is on eHarmony. Thanks to their compatibility quiz, you can see what makes you compatible with other members. On eHarmony, you're one step closer to finding someone you can be yourself with without having to pretend to be someone you're not. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly mini-sode where we dig into the things that we've been watching and playing, I think, recently. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth. We're talking about, this week, the longest movie Terry's seen in a while, Mary Beth's new favorite album, Kid Games and Murder, cool, a new Universal monster, a stunning performance in a mediocre movie, and a surprisingly scary new indie horror game.
Yeah, full up this week.
Before we talk about it, though, everyone, bystanders, my new movie is out on Tuesday, January 21st on VOD, on iTunes / Apple TV, and it'll also be on, rent on Amazon Prime and all those other places. So, support indie filmmaking, especially by women, written by a woman, directed by a woman, a queer woman at that. So, yay! I just wanted to shout that out because it's very soon and it's very exciting. Yeah, it's exciting.
I'm so excited for you. That's so great.
Anyway, the opposite of my movie that is actually sub 90 minutes, the longest movie Terry's seen in a while.
So, your movie is sub 90 minutes, is that what you said?
Yes, it is sub 90 minutes.
So I could fit probably two and maybe a fourth of your movie in the amount of time that I spent watching The Brutalist last weekend, which
hell yeah
has a very brutal runtime of 3 hours and 34 minutes.
Sweet Jesus, it's a miniseries.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's paced incredibly well. That's what I will say. I did not feel... I have seen shorter movies that have felt twice as long as The Brutalist. It's paced incredibly well. It's beautifully shot. The acting is really good. I think the script kind of sucks.
Oh, really?
So here, okay, so The Brutalist, for those that don't know, it takes place in post-war. This man, Laszlo Toth, played by Adrian Brody, is an architect over in Europe. He's Jewish. He flees to America to rebuild his legacy. He is separated from his wife and his niece, who are still stuck over in Europe. And he just gets to send letters to them for a while as they're trying to get them over to the United States. And it's about this architect who he's done a lot of brutalism type stuff over in Europe. And he ends up gaining the eye of a very rich man played by Guy Pearce, who initially hates what he does to his library. That is his Guy Pearce's son hires Laszlo to build him a library, unbeknownst to Guy Pearce's character. When he finds out, he gets pissed, but then he realizes that it's something that no one else has seen in America before, and so then decides to work with Laszlo to build a monument to his mother that ends up careening out of just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and involving more and more cement and more it's brutalism. So very it's weird. But what I really liked about this movie is that it reminds me of sort of the epics that we used to get, personal epics, the what was the movie we even covered on the podcast? Dr. Zhivago.
Oh, yeah.
So like that sort of old school epic, but also very focused on character dramas that were a big thing back in like the 70s and the 60s and whatnot, that I don't feel like we've really gotten anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, that reminds me of that era, almost of like there was almost like There Will Be Blood and like that era of movies
Yes.
too. I feel like
Mhm.
like there was that era in the 2000s that I feel like there were a lot of those like long epics about a man doing something weird. I feel, is that right? Am I misremembering? Okay.
No, you're right. Because I was actually trying to think what was the last time that I saw like an epic of this, and I think There Will Be Blood is probably a very good comparison point for this.
I feel like Paul W.S. Not Paul W.S. Anderson. Paul W.
The other Paul Anderson.
Sorry, I crack myself up. Paul Thomas Anderson. God, wow, their names are really so similar. But Paul Thomas Anderson, I feel like makes a lot of the like, especially in his later career, makes a lot of those like personal epics. And I feel like in my head, I have not seen The Brutalist, but like I compare this in my head to like that era of his movie making of all
I think
those,
that's
like,
I think that's
super
very
long
fair.
movies. Okay. Okay, cool. I know you like
and
Paul Thomas Anderson too. So.
I do, especially Magnolia, which is one of my favorite movies. And so this definitely like harkens back to, I think, maybe that time in American cinema. I think it's interesting because this is like an indie picture from A24. I don't even know if we can call A24 indie anymore, but like but it's not like the a Sony produced movie, and so it has like that kind of low like indie feel to it, but also pretty epic for what it's doing. I think my biggest problem is that by the end of the movie, I feel like the epilogue of the film, it's set into parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and an epilogue. And I think the epilogue at the very end sort of ruins the whole movie for me.
Oh, that's what always happens with these movies and these goddamn long ass fucking movies that are like trying to make some grander point about what it means to be a man, and the epilogue always ruins it. Sorry. It's just frustrating that like they're so long and they're beautiful, and then it's like you had to go on too long to make some point that you ruined.
Yeah. And it reminded me, because like I'm trying to think of a movie, like this is a bad example, but you remember how when we talked about Psycho way back in the day, and at the last scene of Psycho is literally like the psychologist basically explaining what we had just watched for the 2 hours. Yeah. That is how the ending of this movie feels, where it's like,
no.
There's literally a moment by the very end, and I mean, spoiler alert, but I'm not going to really dig into it. I'm just going to say that the ending of the movie takes place in the 80s, after like Laszlo has had his career, and someone is presenting an award and basically breaks down what has happened over the last
shut the fuck
3
up.
hours and 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, really? Have you oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Have you seen Vox Lux?
No, I have not.
Okay, so Brady Corbett, I think it's not. I don't think it's actually Brady Corbett. I think it's like Corbett. I don't know, but I'm gonna say Brady Corbett because I am an unintelligent American. But I liked Vox Lux, which was his movie about Natalie Portman as a pop star. It's like super weird and not very. Like, I don't think it's that. I am like in the minority of people who like it, but he is so often very on the nose with his stuff, and I haven't seen the Brutalist, but from what you're describing, it sounds very similar to some of the issues that I had with Vox Lux, because it's just very much like, did you get it? Did you get it?
Yeah.
You're like, I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And same writing duo of Brady and Mona Fastfold, so it's the same, like literally the same screenwriters as Vox Lux as well. They must be a writing partner together. I think this is my first movie of his that I've seen.
Okay. He's done 3. Childhood of a Leader, which I've never seen. I actually didn't know about until just now looking this up. And then he did Vox Lux. And then he did The Brutalist. But previously, for anyone who's not familiar, he was in Mysterious Skin. He was in the Haneke's remake of Funny Games. So he was an actor first turned director.
He was in Force Majeure as well.
Oh, okay. He's in Melancholia.
Yeah.
Lars von Trier movie.
So, the thing is like, I had a good time watching this. I actually surprisingly did. I will also give a little heads up, because I didn't know this going into it, that there is a scene of male rape in it.
Oh,
so just
Jesus.
As a heads up.
Okay.
Yeah. But, like, I enjoyed it. I was really put off by the ending. But I will say that aside, it is incredibly well paced for a 3.5 hour movie. Like I said, I did not feel the time at all. And a lot of times when I'm watching movies that are 2.5 hours or 3 hours, I'm like, okay, I am ready to be done with this. And I wasn't with this. So it's incredibly well made. It just, I think the theme that it ultimately is trying to say, they did not do a very good job of showing and not telling.
Okay. All right. I really want to watch it. It's daunting. Did you watch it all in one
daunting.
sitting? Did you watch it all in one sitting?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was my Sunday or my Saturday last Saturday. It was like, and the only reason it was that, I was hesitant to watch it because of how long it was, and just the fact that it's been getting a lot of accolades, and I needed to turn in my FYC ballot. I was like, I probably should watch this one since it's getting so I was like, let me just try to knock it out. And I did have a good time with it. It's just the ending is like, okay, really? But yeah, Adrian Brody is really good in it, and as well as Felicity Jones, who plays his wife. She's really good in it. But yeah, it's
Adrian Brody just keeps getting cast as a Holocaust survivor, like a Holocaust survivor. I'm like, oh God, why is he getting typecast as these characters?
I wonder if it's because he has like a very sad face.
I mean, he's an incredible actor and is able to again embody sadness and that emotion very well.
He just looks like an Eeyore. Like, he's just always sad. Like, the weight of the world is on his shoulders.
It's true. He does look like a basset hound.
But yeah, that's The Brutalist. Okay. I think it's either, is it out? I think it's out in theaters still. I don't know. But
yeah, it's out in theaters still.
I think I would maybe wait. There's even an intermission in the movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think I'd probably wait, to be perfectly honest, for streaming, so you can watch it in the comfort of your own home. But it's gorgeously shot, and it's beautifully acted.
Cool.
Swinging wildly. Let's talk about your new favorite album.
So Ethel Cain's new album Perverts is out, and as should surprise no one, I love it, and it's great. But it is, as I'm sure many of you have seen online, if you are chronically online, or really just online at all, it is a very different album from Preacher's Daughter, which came out a couple years ago. Remember I talked about it here, where it's like a pretty linear narrative about a woman who is inevitably kidnapped and killed by her boyfriend, and who eats her body. This is more of a just a drone ambient album that's like the concept of self-indulgence and like a lot of masturbating.
Oh, okay.
And about like I don't know. It's not like it doesn't have like a narrative. It's more just like vibes. And it's silent. It's basically a Silent Hill score
Oh, all
concept
right.
album basically, like because it has a couple songs with lyrics that are really good and really haunting, but a lot of it is like ambient drone music with some like moaning over it, and I mean that as a positive thing. It's hard to explain it because it's so weird. It's I know there is like a niche of people who listen to music like that, and I like ambient music. I'm just not as much of like I'm not a super knowledgeable about it. Like I could not tell you someone else to
Same.
listen to. So this was really at first I was like, ooh, but then I listened to it like in the dark with my noise canceling headphones, and I was like, this is the creepiest thing I've ever listened to. It's just like if you listen to Preacher's Daughter, think Talmia, that song with the demon voice. It's basically
Mm.
like that for a whole album. But
Wow.
yeah. Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah, I've never really gotten into that type of music. Even when like Nine Inch Nails would release albums that were mostly that kind of work, I was like, it's not really meshing with me. But I think how you listen to it is how this type of music should be listened to, with headphones on in a dark room, and
Yeah.
just let yourself be taken over by the music. And I just
Yeah.
that's usually not how I listen to music anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't usually either, but I knew this album was the one to do that with because, again, like a lot of her music is so narrative driven, even though there isn't
Yeah.
a lot of like there isn't a lot of lyrics. Because and it was I've been reading some of this like interviews and the quote and not really interviews, but she has a Tumblr where she'll post like answers to Q&As, and she did uh like a listen along, and I'm on her subreddit, so I read all the comments, and she was just talking about how this is a departure from what she did before because she was like she felt so trapped in trying to make a narrative and wanted to do something that was more just like freeing for her as an artist, and it's really
Yeah.
cool. And there's like, people have been arguing online about it, which is really stupid, and it's really frustrating to see like the fandom that has grown out of her art, and people are like, this is to weed out the real fans, and it's like, no, I think she just like wants to make weird art for herself. Like I don't she has never seemed to me like a person who prioritizes fan sentiment one way or another, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. Like she does what she wants to do because she's an artist, and I love that
Yep.
about her. And she said that she's like, I just wanted to do something different, and I think that if people don't have to like it, that doesn't mean they don't like her as an artist. They might just not want to listen to drone music, and I get it. It's like it's very weird. Like everyone compared Preacher's Daughter to like more Americana. Did you listen to Preacher's Daughter?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Americana rock.
Yep.
There is some like weird stuff in there, but yeah, I mean the cover of Perverts looks like Begotten, like that fucked up weird black and white horror movie from the 90s.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really good. So if you're going to experience it, I highly suggest like in the dark with noise canceling headphones so you can like really hear the sound design, because it's such a well produced album, and like the layers of sound going on, especially when there's no lyrics. If you think it's not just like one tone, there's just like really interesting layering going on that I really really like. And maybe if you imbibe on a little something, depends on your tolerance to that kind of stuff when like things are weird, because it is like it does feel like a horror movie experience listening to it. It's good.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So that's Perverts from Ethel Cain. Yeah. So I don't kids games. I don't know how to. I don't know how to transition. I'm so sorry. So kids games and murder? Question mark.
Yeah. So I realized that I never finished the first season of Squid Game when it came out, and so
Oh.
with the second season out, I was like, okay, I'm gonna finish the first season and I'm gonna give the second season a try, and boy oh boy did I love the second season.
Oh really? I didn't finish the first season either.
The second season, I think, has a lot more interesting characters in it, and it digs into a lot more interesting dynamics between them. And I think that some of the breakdowns that happen in it feel more character driven than plot driven, if that makes sense. Like I feel like the characters are well developed in the second season than they were in the first season.
Okay.
I'm not going to spoil anything. I will say that it's basically following the same guy who ends up getting, through a roundabout way, pulled back into the Squid Game after...
This is...
What?
Nothing. That's why I hate second seasons. Let the man live. Don't make him go back through that shit again. That's so unfair.
Yeah, well, what I
yes,
do think
I
is
know that this is about money and narrative and their characters. I know, but it still makes me angry. Anyway.
So I will say that at least in this particular case, it is more him driven than it is plot driven.
Okay.
Because at the very end of the first season, I mean, okay, spoiler alert for the first season, the character that returns won the first season. And there's like a moment where he can like go off into the future and he decides not to, and he wants to dismantle this organization.
Oh,
So
I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so like he gets involved on the second season, and it plays against expectations about the first season. So there's some really fun kind of ways in which it subverts what happened in the first season. And this was initially planned to be there's two seasons. There's gonna be season 2 and season 3, but it was initially planned to be one season, but it got too long, so they cut it in half. And this builds to quite an exciting cliffhanger and climax that I'm like, I need the third season ASAP.
So it's worth watching, is what you're telling me.
I think it is definitely worth watching.
Another fucking show to watch.
There's also an interesting trans character in this season who is played, unfortunately, by a cis man. But it's because, and I'm gonna have to take the creator by his word. It's because it's very difficult to find openly trans people, let alone actors, in South Korea, because it is very conservative.
All right. That I will concede to that. And I guess if you don't want to be open and out yourself on TV, all right, that's
it's one of those, and I'm of two minds. One, because it's like, I'm always gonna push for authentic representation in things, whether particularly from the queer community. However, I think that what this is doing, particularly as being such a global phenomenon and being in a relatively conservative type of, at least sociologically, I can't say anything else about them being conservative, but sociologically, like, conservative in South Korea, that I could see this being quite a big deal. And the character is really interesting. So I think it's good. It just, it sucks that he couldn't cast a trans person to play the character. But I do recommend it. I think it's better than the first season.
Huh. Okay. Well then. Didn't the was like a whole thing with like Netflix. Didn't Netflix like rip him off or something? The director of the first season. There was like some controversy with Netflix doing something to him, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Or
I mean,
this could have
he
been
probably
the internet.
he probably didn't get paid a whole lot because it was supposed to be like a quiet, it like I don't think Netflix
Oh
or anyone was expecting
yeah.
it to blow up like it did. So I'm guessing that he probably got better compensated for these next two seasons than the first one that kind of blew up out of nowhere. But yeah, so new Squid Game is good. If you've been kind of like for the longest time because it was so popular, I was like, I'm not gonna watch this.
I've been like, I tried to watch I watched the first episode and I was just like, I've seen this before. And I was just like, which is like, sounds so snooty. It sounds like so lame, but it just feels like Battle Royale, and I liked Battle Royale more. So I just didn't, I was a snob and just didn't watch it.
I will say the first season gets really good. And the second season I do think is a huge step up from the first season personally.
Fine.
Like I binged the second season in like a day and a half.
Oh shit. Okay.
I couldn't stop watching it. That's Squid Game.
Cool.
Let's talk about Wolfman, which is I'm guessing what a new Universal monster is.
Yeah. So I saw Wolfman on Tuesday night. This is Lee Whannell's new take on the Universal monster, following in the footsteps of his 2020 Invisible Man. And this stars Christopher Abbott as Blake. He's a writer who is also a stay-at-home dad because he's between jobs, with a high-powered journalist wife played by Julia Garner. And he finds out that his estranged dad has passed away and that he needs to go to their secluded family farm to pack up the cabin, etc., etc. And he convinces his wife, they are on the edge of divorce, to go with him to just see where he grew up and, like, come back together as a family. And it, of course, goes wrong immediately. Something attacks them in the middle of the road. They run to the house. They get inside, but not before Christopher Abbott gets a scratch. And it all kind of goes downhill from there. And I think I like this more than most people, but as everyone has said, and you've probably seen, boy, oh boy, I don't know what happened to that script, baby. It's kind of a bummer. So, like, I really loved Invisible Man. I think we've talked about that before. Yeah. I think Lee Whannell's a great director.
Yeah.
I think he is usually a great writer, but something here, it's so... It starts out strong, and it's like, he's trying to really tap into, like, intergenerational trauma and, like, not wanting to be like his dad. But then it kind of loses the plot and becomes just like a monster movie. And there's so many interesting things going on at the beginning about, like, it makes like a werewolf home invasion movie in a way, and like that's really cool. And I also think I love the way that Whannell is changing the werewolf mythos here. It's not what you expect when you think of a werewolf, and I love that. I think people are gonna be like, that's ass, but it's like Cronenbergian The Fly type vibes, which
Okay.
I liked. I'm down with it. I think that Whannell makes some really, really bold choices, and I like some of them, but some of them just, like, they just don't land. I think he was trying to be... It feels like he's trying to be vulnerable about, like, fatherhood, but he didn't go deep enough. So, I don't know. It's kind of a bummer because, Christopher Abbott's really good in it. Julia Garner is wasted and is, like, the most one-dimensional female character I've ever seen in a horror movie in a long time, which is, like, a super big bummer.
That's too bad.
But, like, the practical effects are really good. There's some really good scares and some really good set pieces, but, like, the narrative in between the set pieces is just, like, so disjointed. It's a bummer. It's a bummer.
That's too bad.
I liked it more than most people, too.
Yeah. I was gonna say I've seen all over the place. All the opinions all over the place with this one.
Yeah.
I want to see it still. I love Christopher Abbott. I think he is such an interesting actor with the roles that he picks, because he's always like, I mean, he's a incredibly attractive man. He's very like stereotypically handsome in that masculine way, in that sort of stereotypical masculine way, but he picks roles that always seem to subvert that, whether it's like Possessor or Sanctuary or even his character in Poor Things. Like I think he's an interesting actor that I would love to see more from.
Yeah, and he plays like, again, a stay-at-home dad who's trying to beat the cycle and is, you know, not as pathetic as some of the other characters he's played, but definitely in like a less masculine role. And something I like about this movie is that it tries to grapple with daddy issues, like men struggling with daddy issues in horror. I don't think we ever see a lot of like, it's always women dealing with parental issues. It's mostly mommy issues, but there's some daddy issues, but it's never like, it's just not often men are trying to cope with that. And so I did really appreciate trying to address that kind of daddy issue horror from that perspective, for sure. Because again, we don't get that a lot. It needed like another pass, or like it felt like something was missing. I don't know.
That's too bad.
Yeah. But it's out in theaters now as of this episode. I mean, it's definitely great to see in theaters. There's some great scares in it. Really great editing. There's that really awesome cinematography that Winnell and his cinematographer use a lot. That's like kind of like found footage with the panning and looking at empty frames. Mm-hmm. There's some really great gags there. It just, don't go in expecting much from the story.
I might go see it this weekend. I don't know.
Yeah. And honestly, like, spinning off into another stunning performance in a mediocre movie, would love to hear. Love to hear what yours is.
Yeah, so again, listeners, I've been trying to catch up on FYC screeners for your consideration things over the last few weeks. And so this last one that I wanted to talk about today is The Last Showgirl.
Oh, okay.
Directed by Gia Coppola, and starring, of course, Pamela Anderson. And the first half of this movie...
She's so hot. She's just so beautiful. Like, she's just... Sorry, she's been everywhere, and I just love that she is, like, Miss Natural, like, hottie, like, don't give a shit. Like, not even don't give a shit, but just, like, natural beauty. Yeah. I don't know, it's so interesting to see her, like, transformation as a person. It's fucking nuts. And so I'm excited to hear about this movie, because it's just been... I haven't watched it yet, and I'm loving this, like, new Pamela Anderson era that we're in. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I've just been very excited. I've been very excited about her.
So here's the thing. Whenever I see one of the words that, and I'm going to use it here, but one of the words that, like, critics use that makes me kind of roll my eyes a lot is when someone calls a performance revelatory, but it's basically that they're allowing themselves to be, quote unquote, not Hollywood pretty. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like revelatory, and it's just like okay, it's
she's ugly.
Charlize Theron in Monster, like making this up, right? Like, okay, it's like, okay, there's the physicality, yes, but like, what about the performance? And so people have been calling like her performance remarkable, tour de force, you know, revelatory, the role of a lifetime. And I'm like, okay, is this just because she's going natural? Like, why are we saying this? Because that's historically been what people say. Like, oh, she's so brave in this because she's not wearing makeup. Like,
yeah,
what? But no, this actually is.
On.
Yeah. This is actually a revelatory performance. She is incredibly good in this movie. And I mean, the plot is pretty simple. It's basically she's been working as a Las Vegas showgirl for a career spanning over 30 years. And she's been basically, as part of this one hotel's showgirl run, is now coming to a close after 30 years because no one's going to see showgirls anymore. And so she's like having to kind of deal with the fact that something that she has given her entire basically life for and has given up so much of family time for is now she's being kind of cast aside as like too old, no longer needed. Like things are moving more into the more kind of sexual place as opposed to just the way that showgirls are. And it's just, I don't know. She's like she's dealing with that, coming to terms with that as being an older woman that has relied on that for her entire career. And so it's very like simple in that regard. I think the story kind of gets a little too melodramatic in the last half. It sort of loses that sort of like, it has a gritty feel in the very beginning, and there's a lot of shots of Las Vegas as like an aging thing. Like Las Vegas, as much as I hate to say it, feels like a character in this because it is sort of like looking at that sort of the shine and the glamour might be fading, and it's no longer that sort of glistening city that has historically been associated with it. And I think there's an interesting comparison with that and her as a character in this movie. It's just by the midpoint of the movie, it just I wasn't quite sure where this narrative was going with her, whether she was in the midst of like having a breakdown or if this was just narrative convenience for a lot of it. And the script I don't like. And I think that by the end of the movie, I was just like, it kind of ruins the film, to be perfectly honest. However, her performance is the reason to see it. Her performance, and honestly, Jamie Lee Curtis as her friend, that is, I mean, she's taking a page from Trump's playbook in terms of the amount of face tanner that she is wearing in this. And her performance is really good. Jamie Lee Curtis is really good in this role. I would not be surprised if she is nominated for Best Supporting Actress, because she's really good in this.
All right, well, at least it's deserved in this then, rather than in, I'm sorry, but Everything Everywhere All at Once is a crime. And that is not against Jamie Lee Curtis. That is against criminal.
It was a crime.
Fucking criminal.
It was a crime. Yeah, that was criminal.
I know those don't mean shit, but that was egregious. Like, that was a particularly, but anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I need to see it. I need to watch it.
But yeah, I think it's definitely worth watching for Pamela Anderson's performance in it. Just expect it to kind of start to take like a very melodramatic soap opera-y turn in the last half. The one thing I will say about her performance that is the reason why I was like, okay, this is really revelatory, is she has that very soft voice, you know, that sort of quintessential Pamela Anderson voice that she always uses. You know what I mean? What I'm talking about?
Yeah, kind of like, sorry, bimbo voice a little bit.
Yeah, it really is. And she uses that, and there's a moment in the first act, maybe second act, I can't remember exactly when she gets angry over something, and I was like, are we gonna... But she doesn't let her voice change, and it's very controlled, still using that voice, but she's very angry, and I was like, oh... This is interesting, because I figured this would have been a moment where the character would go into like almost histrionics and just be, because that was the kind of the intent, the anger behind what she was saying, but she was very controlled. And it builds to this moment in the very end of the film where that voice is gone, and she is, all of her like armor is gone, and she is just shouting like I would not expect her to do. But I love that they waited until the end to really kind of build her to that moment, instead of just like, okay, this is the scene where you're going to be real, quote unquote. You know what I mean? So like, I was like, that really impressed me, the choices that she made for the moment when you thought that she would be letting loose early in the film and saving it for the end. I was really impressed.
I love that. I love that this is the year of like divas finally getting their due.
Yeah. Between her and Demi.
Like her and Demi, and just the fact that like Pamela Anderson is now going out like, and it's just like, I don't care what anyone thinks. Like, I am a bad bitch, and I just love that she's like getting, again, I just feel like she's been so sexualized for so long, and she's just been treated a certain way for so long, and my stepmom looked like her too, which was like super weird. That's like a whole other weird thing that I've like thought about
weird.
for like a long time. They had like the same eyebrows. It was like very fucking strange. But I just love that these women are getting appreciated, and I wish it didn't take so long, and I wish that it didn't have to deal, especially, well, with both of them, like, degrading them, especially, like, Pamela Anderson's sexuality, but I do kind of love that she's now, like, I'm a fucking cinephile, and y'all just, like, underestimated the shit out of me, and sucks to be you, and I love that.
Yeah. I saw on TikTok her with Letterbox giving her favorite four or whatever, and I was like, oh, she is a cinephile.
Yeah, and she did the went to the Criterion Closet and like
Mm-hmm.
really loved it. I love that because she's talking about David Lynch, and I was looking at this Roger Ebert interview where she's talking about how much she loves like Cassavetes, and she's just like such a movie person, and it's really just it's cool to see her get to make a movie where she can like be a cinephile and other women are with her being cinephiles. It's neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neat.
But yeah, that was The Last Showgirl. I recommend it, even though just be prepared for it to kind of fizzle out on a narrative side, I would say. Transitioning wildly again, what is this surprisingly scary new indie horror game?
So, full disclosure, I watched someone play this because I have no brain space for anything but Stardew Valley and Project Runway reruns. But I watched a full playthrough of this because it's a very short game. It's like it's like an hour and a half. But it's called The Cabin Factory.
Okay, I've seen this pop up on TikTok a whole lot.
Yeah, so I watched, and I watched them play like all the endings. But so this is a new game. It's like less than 2 hours, especially it's less than 2 hours, and the premise is basically you work at a cabin factory, and the cabins you work at a company that like manufactures cabins for haunted attractions, and they've been getting reports that some of the cabins are haunted, so you have to inspect each cabin, and if you see movement in the cabin, it's haunted, and if you don't see any movement, it's clear. And it's very simple, but the developer, International Cat Studios, does this incredible job of, okay, establishing the cabin. It's the same cabin every time. It's, you walk in and it's a scene, and, you know, they set the scene of there's there's a bed in a corner, there's a weird painting, there's a guy sitting in the corner, and there's an upstairs where there's a creepy kid, and there's a door, like, to a basement, but it's not open. And this is one of those games where you get used to the surroundings and then starts fucking with you. And you'll go in there and it'll be a really scary scenario that's totally different, but nothing's moving, so it's not haunted. So it's playing with these expectations of like, oh, you're scared and something seems wrong, but nothing's moving. So actually, it's not haunted, it's just being designed to scare you that way. And it is so fucking creepy and weird and plays with your expectations, and it's really, really smart in how it crafts its scares, not just as jump scares. A lot of it feels very much like the fear of stillness and play with your expectations. And it's definitely a really good game, like, if people come over and they want to play it, or like you want to play something scary and want to watch, this is a good one because you can all like look out for if anything is moving. It feels very much like found footage-y because you're looking for the thing that's moving. Right. You're looking for the scary thing if anything's going to happen. And sometimes it's like really obvious. Sometimes it's very subtle. And it's almost like it's like a walking simulator because you can't. The only thing you do is run out and press the button to say it's haunted. You can't fight back or anything. So it's no combat. It's basically just like walking, observing, and hitting a button. And it's $2.99 on Steam. So again, like, I got scared just watching someone play it, and there's like 25 or 30 different scenarios of what could happen in the cabins. So, and the game ends after you have to get 8 in a row right. Every time you get one wrong, it resets. So you have to get 8 in a row correct. And once you clear it, you can replay it to get all of the endings. And then there's like a replayability mode where you can just play like on a loop.
Cool.
So, yes, that's the Cabin Factory.
I've been enjoying watching people play it on TikTok, like the TikToks that pop up. They've been really entertaining.
Yeah, and just like seeing how it's the way it ends is really smart, and I think it says to be continued, and I'm hoping they're going to make a longer game out of it, because where it goes and the way that it's playing with like liminal spaces and expectations of and like haunted games, I think it's so smart. So I'm hoping that there's more to come from them, because it's just it's a hoot.
Heck yeah. That's
It's
cool.
a hoot. Yeah. But yeah. So that about does it for this week's Little Cuts. But Terry, who are we talking to on Monday?
So we are chatting with Jeff Seaman, producer of Mary Beth's film Bystanders, and we're chatting about Friday the 13th.
Yes, we're gonna talk about all things Bystanders, and then all things his favorite, Jason Voorhees. So it'll be fun, and you guys can learn all about the movie.
Heck yeah.
And also for one day we'll get to 30 Rock. One day Mary Beth will remember when she doesn't have things happening. Life is great. But anyway, listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Did you watch, listen, or play anything that we talked about this week and have thoughts? Do you have any suggestions for things we should cover? You can let us know by sending us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on social media. I am MB McAndrews on Twitter and Blue Sky, X and Blue Sky, whatever the fuck. And at mb.mcandrews on Instagram. I know every single fucking social platform at this point is either disappearing or is trash, but I am still on them because I have to be, kind of. So, boo. Hellscape.
It is a hellscape, and I'm at Gaily Dreadful, mostly on Blue Sky. I have a presence on Instagram, but with stuff that's been happening, I'm like less interested in spending my time on that platform. But yeah, I'm at Gaily Dreadful everywhere.
And yeah, we're at Scarred Podcast on Blue Sky, at Scarred for Life Podcast on Instagram for now.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you, Derek Parrish, for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.